The morning sky above Nexus Prime burned red. Explosions lit up the horizon as massive ships hung in space like dark clouds. So-Jin stood at the command center window, watching her world die. The blue-skinned Valian pressed her hands against the glass. Outside, the colony's beautiful crystal towers cracked and fell. Energy beams from the enemy ships cut through buildings like knives through paper. The peaceful world her people had built over 50 years was crumbling in just one day. Administrator So-Jin, called Tae-min from across the room. The young engineer's voice shook with fear. The outer shields are down to 30%. The power grid cannot take much more. So-Jin turned away from the window. Around her, dozens of Valians worked at control panels, their faces pale with terror. These people had never seen war. They built things, studied science, created art. They had no weapons, no armies, no idea how to fight. The enemy was the Korthak Empire. They came from the dark edge of the galaxy, conquering worlds and enslaving or killing everyone they found. The Korthak took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. They had been moving through this sector for months, leaving dead worlds behind. Them! How long before the shields fail completely? So-Jin asked Tae-min. The young engineer looked at his screens. His hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to redirect power from other systems. Maybe 6 hours. 8 if we shut down everything else. Jin nodded. She had already ordered all civilians to the underground shelters. Families ran through the streets, carrying children and a few belongings. The lucky ones made it to safety. Before the next wave of attacks hit, a new explosion shook the building. The lights flickered and some control panels went dark. Tae-min cursed in the old Valian language as he tried to restart the damaged systems. What about evacuation ships? So-Jin asked her communications officer. The Korthak destroyed our transport fleet in the first attack, the officer replied. Only small shuttles remain, and they cannot carry everyone. So-Jin felt cold despite the warm air in the command center. The Korthak had planned this attack. Well, they surrounded the planet, destroyed the defenses, and cut off all escape routes. It was a perfect trap. She had sent messages to other Valian colonies begging for help. But their people were peaceful. They had some security forces and patrol ships, but nothing that could fight the Korthak fleet. The nearest military species was the Alteran Federation, but they were weeks away. Another explosion. Closer this time. The building shook harder, and cracks appeared in the walls. Through the broken window, So-Jin could see Korthak landing ships coming down like falling stars. Soon, enemy soldiers would walk through her city. Try sending a message on all frequencies, So-Jin told her communications officer. Emergency broadcast to any ship, any world, anyone who might help. The officer's fingers danced over his controls. Broadcasting now, Administrator. So-Jin picked up the microphone with shaking hands. She had to try, even if no one would hear in time. This is Administrator So-Jin of Nexus Prime Colony, she began. Her voice echoed through the room and out into space. We are under attack by the Korthak Empire. Our defenses are failing. We have no military forces, no weapons capable of fighting. Their fleet. Civilian population is approximately 200,000 souls. She paused as another explosion lit up the sky. Smoke rose from the burning city below. We are a peaceful people. We have never made war on anyone. We ask for help from any species that can hear this message. We have children in our shelters, families hiding in fear. If you can help us, please come quickly. We do not have much time. The transmission went out across the galaxy at light speed. It would take days or weeks to reach most worlds. By then, Nexus Prime would be a dead rock floating in space. On Earth, 3 systems away, Communications Officer Hyun-woo sat at his desk in the Global Defense Monitoring Station. He was tired after a long night shift, drinking his 5th cup of coffee and watching the endless stream of messages from across human space. Most were routine reports from cargo ships, colony updates, and scientific data. Then something different appeared on his screen. The universal distress frequency was activating. Hyun Woo set down his coffee and listened to the desperate message from the Valian administrator. He had heard of the Valians before. They were known as peaceful traders and brilliant scientists. They shared technology freely and never bothered anyone. The young officer recorded the message and immediately sent it to his supervisor. Within minutes, it reached the Earth Defense Command headquarters. Within an hour, it was on the desk of Admiral Chen, head of Earth's Rapid Response Forces. Back on Nexus Prime, the shields failed completely. The protective energy barrier that had kept the Korthak bombardment at bay flickered and died. Now nothing stood between the enemy ships and the planet's surface. Taemin looked up from his controls with tears in his eyes. "I am sorry, Administrator. The power core cannot provide any more energy to the shield generators." So, Jin put her hand on the young engineer's shoulder. "You did your best. We all did." Korthak landing ships began to touch down around the city. Each ship carried 100 soldiers in black armor, carrying weapons that could cut through stone walls. They moved with mechanical precision, following orders to secure the area and eliminate any resistance. The Valians had no resistance to offer. Their security forces carried stun weapons designed to stop criminals, not kill enemy soldiers. Against Korthak battle armor, the stun weapons were useless. "Administrator," called the communications officer, "I am getting reports from other parts of the city. The enemy soldiers are moving through the residential areas. They are killing everyone they find." Sojin closed her eyes. She had hoped the Korthak might take prisoners, might leave the civilians alone. But she had heard stories from other worlds. The Korthak showed no mercy. "Tell everyone to stay in the deep shelters," she ordered. "Maybe some will survive until help comes." But in her heart, Sojin knew no help was coming. The message she had sent was a prayer thrown into the darkness of space. Even if someone heard it, even if they wanted to help, Nexus Prime was too far away. She looked out at her burning city one last time. Somewhere in the underground tunnels, 200,000 of her people waited in fear. Children crying for parents, families holding each other close, old people remembering better days. The Korthak would find them eventually. The enemy always did. So Jin did not know that her message had already reached Earth. She did not know that human soldiers were preparing for an impossible mission. She only knew that her world was ending, and all hope was lost. Admiral Chen stared at the holographic display showing the Nexus Prime system. Red markers indicated Korthak fleet positions, while blue dots marked the last known locations of Valian settlements. The numbers did not look good. How long to reach? Nexus Prime at maximum FTL speed? Chen asked his tactical officer. 3 days, sir, came the reply. But according to our intelligence, Valian colonies typically fall within 18 hours when attacked by a full Korthak invasion force. Chen rubbed his temples. The math was simple and brutal. By the time any help arrived, there would be nothing left to save except empty buildings and mass graves. Around the conference table, other officers shared his grim expression. Earth had ships and soldiers, but they were spread across dozens of worlds protecting human colonies. The nearest major fleet was 5 days away from Nexus Prime. "Sir," spoke up Captain Ji-ho, commander of the 47th Rapid Response Unit, "my team can be ready to deploy in 2 hours." Admiral Chen looked at the Marine captain. Ji-ho was a veteran of border conflicts with hostile alien species. His unit specialized in quick strikes and impossible missions. But 12 soldiers against an entire Korthak invasion fleet seemed like suicide. "Captain, I appreciate your courage, but the Korthak fleet has 40 ships. Even if your people could somehow reach the planet's surface, what could 12 Marines accomplish?" Ji-ho leaned forward. "Sir, we have studied Korthak tactics. They rely on overwhelming force and conventional siege warfare. Once they control orbital space, they believe victory is assured. They become relaxed. Relaxed enough to let a small force make a difference? Possibly, sir. The Valians are pacifists. The Korthak will not expect military resistance. If we can reach the planet and organize the survivors, we might disrupt their operations long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Admiral Chen looked around the table. Every tactical analysis said the mission was hopeless, but the desperate plea from Administrator So Jin echoed in his mind. 200,000 civilians were dying while they debated. How would you even reach the planet? The Korthak fleet will detect any approaching ship. Jiho smiled grimly. We use the Indomitable. She is small, fast, and has the newest stealth systems. If we drop out of FTL at the edge of the system and coast in on minimal power, we might avoid detection. The Admiral considered this. The Indomitable was an experimental assault ship designed for exactly this type of mission, but it had never been tested against Korthak sensors. Even if you reached the surface, you would be cut off. No support, no resupply, no evacuation. That is correct, sir. The room fell silent. Admiral Chen knew he was being asked to send 12 good soldiers to their deaths on a mission with almost no chance of success. But sometimes impossible missions were the only ones worth attempting. Very well, Captain. You have a go. Take whatever equipment you need. 2 hours later, Jiho stood with his team in the Indomitable's cargo bay. Sergeant Da-un checked explosive charges while Private Min Su cleaned his sniper rifle. Corporal Yu-jin organized medical supplies with practiced efficiency. The other 8 members of the team prepared their own gear. Each soldier carried enough ammunition and supplies for a week of independent operations. They had body armor, portable communicators, and weapons designed to punch through alien battlesuits. Listen up, Jiho addressed his team. By the time we reach Nexus Prime, the colony will likely have fallen. Our job is to find survivors and make the Korthak wish they had never heard of this planet. Da-un looked up from her explosives. What is the mission objective, sir? Survival, Jiho replied. Ours and theirs. We keep as many Valians alive as possible until reinforcements arrive. And if reinforcements do not arrive, asked Minsu. Jiho met the young sniper's eyes. Then we make the Korthak pay for every inch of ground. The Indomitable launched from Earth's orbital station with minimal fanfare. The small ship accelerated quickly, its experimental engines pushing it to the edge of human space in record time. Then it jumped to FTL, racing across the galaxy toward a distant world most humans had never heard of. During the 3-day journey, the team studied everything available about Korthak tactics and Valian technology. The aliens were known for brutal efficiency in planetary conquest. They would establish orbital control, destroy military targets, then land ground forces to secure strategic locations. The Valians, meanwhile, were master engineers and energy specialists. Their cities used advanced power grids and automated systems. Their technology was far ahead of most species, but designed for peace rather than war. If we can link up with surviving engineers, Yu-jin suggested, we might turn their infrastructure into weapons. Daeun nodded enthusiastically. Mining lasers, construction equipment, transport systems, all can be modified for military use. Jiho appreciated his team's optimism, but he knew the reality would be far grimmer. The Korthak were not known for leaving useful infrastructure intact. On the 2nd day of their journey, they received an update from Earth intelligence. Long-range sensors had detected massive explosions in the Nexus Prime system. The orbital bombardment had begun. How many ships? Jiho asked the communications officer. 43 Korthak vessels, sir. Standard invasion fleet composition. Jiho did quick calculations in his head. A force that size could level a planet in hours if they chose to. The fact that they were taking days suggested they wanted the colony infrastructure intact for their own use. On the third day, the Indomitable reached the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Captain Park, the ship's pilot, reduced power to minimum levels and began a slow approach using only gravitational momentum. Korthak fleet is in standard occupation formation, reported the sensor operator. Battleships maintain orbital positions while smaller ships patrol the system perimeter. Through the ship's telescopes, they could see the planet's surface. Smoke covered most of the main continent. Fires burned in dozens of locations. The beautiful crystal cities the Valians had built were now broken ruins. "Any signs of resistance?" Jiho asked. "Negative, sir. No energy signatures suggesting active defenses or military operations." Jiho felt a cold weight in his stomach. They were too late. The colony had fallen, just as everyone predicted. Below, 200,000 civilians were probably dead or dying. But as the Indomitable crept closer to the planet, the sensor operator noticed something interesting. "Sir, I am detecting weak heat signatures in the underground areas. Multiple locations showing possible life signs." Da-Yun looked up sharply. "Survivors?" "Possibly. The readings are consistent with large groups of people in confined spaces." Jiho felt a spark of hope. If people were alive in underground shelters, there might still be a chance to help them. "Can we reach the surface without detection?" Captain Park studied his navigation displays. "There is a mountain range on the far side of the planet, outside. The main patrol routes. We could land there and approach the colony on foot." "How far?" "Approximately 50 kilometers through rough terrain." Jiho looked at his team. 50 kilometers of hiking while carrying full combat gear would be exhausting. But it was their only option. "Do it," he ordered. The Indomitable changed course, slipping through the outer system like a ghost. In a few hours, they would be on the ground. Then the real mission would begin. The Indomitable touched down in a rocky valley between two peaks, hidden from the Korthak patrol routes. Jiho and his team emerged into the thin mountain air of Nexus Prime, their boots crunching on alien soil. Above them, the sky was dark with smoke. In the distance, they could see the glow of fires still burning in the colony. The air tasted of ash and something else, the metallic scent of destruction. "Spread out and maintain radio silence," Jiho whispered into his helmet communicator. "We move fast and quiet." The team began their 50-kilometer trek toward the colony. They moved in single file through the rocky terrain, using natural cover to avoid detection. Da-Yun carried extra explosives in her pack, while Minsu kept his sniper rifle ready for long-range threats. After 4 hours of hiking, they reached a ridge overlooking the main colony. What they saw made even hardened soldiers pause in shock. The beautiful crystal spires that had defined Nexus Prime were gone. In their place stood twisted metal and broken stone. Korthak landing ships squatted like giant insects among the ruins. Enemy soldiers in black armor patrolled the streets, searching for anyone still hiding. "Count 47 enemy vehicles," Minsu reported quietly. "Multiple patrol patterns. They are being very thorough." Jiho studied the scene through his binoculars. The Korthak were methodical in their occupation. They had set up command posts at strategic locations and were systematically searching every building. Bodies lay in the streets, Valian civilians who had not reached shelter in time. "Look there," Yujin pointed to a section near the city center. "That building is intact. It might be an entrance to the underground tunnels." Da-Un adjusted her scope for a better view. "I see movement around that area. The Korthak are guarding something important." As they watched, a group of Korthak soldiers dragged several Valian prisoners from a building. The blue-skinned aliens had their hands bound and looked terrified. The soldiers forced them toward one of the landing ships. "They are taking prisoners," Jiho observed. "That means some survived the initial attack." Deep beneath the colony, Taemin led a group of 30 Valians through maintenance tunnels that connected the city's infrastructure. The young engineer had memorized these passages during his years working on the power grid. Now that knowledge was keeping people alive. "Stay quiet," he whispered to the group behind him. These tunnels carry sound. Among the survivors were families, with children, elderly scholars, and other engineers who had been working underground when the attack began. They had food and water for maybe 3 days. After that, they would have to risk going to the surface. "How many others do you think made it to the deep shelters?" asked Dr. Haywan, an older scientist. "I do not know," Taemin replied honestly. "The evacuation procedures called for 50,000 people to use the underground areas, but I have only contacted 6 groups so far." The reality was grim. Most of the underground shelters had been discovered by Korthak soldiers. The enemy had sensors that could detect large heat signatures through rock and metal. Only the smallest groups in the deepest tunnels remained hidden. Above ground, Commander Wu Jin of the Korthak Third Fleet stood in his temporary headquarters. The large alien wore ceremonial armor decorated with the skulls of previous enemies. His red eyes scanned reports from his patrol leaders. "Status report," he demanded from his aide. "Orbital bombardment destroyed 90% of surface structures," the aide replied. "Ground forces have secured all strategic locations. Resistance was minimal, as expected from these peaceful creatures." Wu Jin nodded with satisfaction. The Valians had fallen even faster than predicted. Their advanced technology meant nothing without the will to fight. What about the population? Approximately 40,000 civilians eliminated. We estimate another 30,000 captured. For slave labor, the rest are hiding in underground areas. How long to clear the tunnels? 2 days, Commander. Our sensors are mapping the underground network. We will flood them with poison gas once we locate all entrances. Wu Jin smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Excellent. The Emperor will be pleased with our efficiency." The Korthak commander had no idea that 12 human soldiers were moving through the mountains toward his position. He had never fought humans before. In his experience, once orbital control was established, victory was inevitable. Ji-ho and his team reached the outskirts of the colony as darkness fell. They had spotted several Korthak patrol routes and identified weaknesses in the enemy security pattern. "There," Da-un pointed to a drainage canal that led under the city. "We can use that to reach the underground areas without being seen." The team slipped into the concrete channel and began moving toward the colony center. The canal smelled of industrial chemicals and carried the sound of their footsteps despite their efforts to move quietly. After 30 minutes of careful progress, they encountered their first Korthak patrol. 5 enemy soldiers walked along the canal edge, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. They wore full battle armor and carried pulse rifles capable of melting through steel. Ji-ho held up his hand, signaling his team to stop. They pressed against the canal walls, hoping the shadows would hide them, but one of the Korthak soldiers decided to check the drainage area. The alien climbed down into the canal, his rifle raised. His helmet light swept back and forth, searching for any sign of life. Ji-ho made a quick decision. He could not let the soldier report their presence. Moving silently, he drew his combat knife and crept up behind the Korthak. The alien was strong and wore protective armor, but humans had learned to fight creatures much larger than themselves. Ji-ho's knife found the weak spot between helmet and neck armor. The Korthak dropped without making a sound. Above, the other 4 soldiers continued their patrol, unaware that their companion was dead. Ji-ho's team moved quickly past the body and deeper into the colony. "First contact," Da-un whispered into her communicator. "Enemy down. No alarm raised." They reached a tunnel entrance near what had been the city's main power plant. The heavy metal door was partially open, suggesting someone had used it recently. "Heat signatures inside," Yujin reported, checking her scanner. "Multiple life forms, approximately 30 meters down." Ji-ho made another decision that would change everything. Instead of observing from a distance, he chose to make contact. "Anyone down there?" he called softly into the tunnel. "We are here to help." The response came quickly, footsteps running toward them and hushed voices speaking in the Valian language. A young blue-skinned face appeared at the tunnel entrance, eyes wide with surprise. "You are not Korthak." Taemin said in accented, human English. What species are you? Human, Jiho replied. We received your distress call. How many survivors are down there? Taemin's eyes filled with tears of relief. 30 in this group. But there are others scattered throughout the tunnel system. We thought no help was coming. Help is here, Jiho said simply, but we need to move fast. The Korthak will find these tunnels soon. As his team descended into the underground refuge, Jiho began to formulate a plan. The enemy had overwhelming numerical superiority, but they were fighting on Valian territory using Valian infrastructure. With the right modifications, peaceful technology could become very dangerous indeed. Commander Wu Jin would soon learn that humans did not fight like other species. When cornered, they did not surrender or flee, they bit back. In the underground tunnels beneath Nexus Prime, an impossible alliance was forming. Humans who had learned to fight in the darkest corners of space worked alongside Valians who had never known violence. Together, they began to transform a peaceful colony into something the Korthak had never encountered. Taemin led Jiho through the tunnel network, showing him the colony's infrastructure. These passages connect every major building, the young engineer explained. Power conduits, water, systems, communication lines, everything runs through here. Jiho studied the layout with a soldier's eye. Can you access the main power grid from down here? Yes, but why would you want to? The Korthak control the power plant now. Not for long, Da-un said, examining a junction box filled with energy cables. Show me how these systems work. For the next hour, Taemin gave the humans a crash course in Valian technology. Their power systems used focused energy beams that could be redirected through crystalline conduits. Their construction equipment operated on gravitational manipulation. Even their lighting systems could be modified to produce intense heat. You want to turn our peaceful tools into weapons, Taemin said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Your peaceful tools are already weapons, Jiho replied. You just never thought to use them that way. In another tunnel section, Yu-Jin worked with Dr. Hei-Wan to treat wounded survivors. The elderly Valian scientist watched in amazement as the human medic used techniques that seemed brutal but effective. You cut into the wound to remove debris, Dr. Hei-Wan observed. We would use energy healing to slowly dissolve foreign matter. Your way is gentler, Yu-Jin agreed, but my way is faster. In combat, speed saves lives. The cultural exchange went both ways. The humans learned about Valian energy manipulation, while the Valians discovered human adaptability. Each species brought something unique to their desperate situation. Above ground, the Korthak began to notice small problems. Patrol units reported equipment failures and communication disruptions. Commander Wu Jin initially dismissed these as normal operational difficulties. Sir, his aide reported, Patrol 7 has lost contact. Their last transmission was from the industrial sector. Send a squad to investigate, Wu Jin ordered. Probably just radio interference from the damaged buildings. But Patrol 7 was not suffering from radio interference. They were dead, killed by humans who struck without warning and vanished back into the tunnel system. Minsu had picked off their leader with a single shot from 800 meters. The others fell to precisely placed explosive charges. Da-un had learned to weaponize Valian mining equipment. The focused energy beams used to cut through rock could slice through Korthak armor just as easily. She and Taemin worked together to modify the tools, turning industrial lasers into sniper weapons. The power output needs to be increased by 30%, Taemin said, adjusting crystal alignments in the device. Can the targeting system track moving targets? Dae-Yoon asked. If we connect it to the construction automation network, yes. The system is designed to track and manipulate multiple objects simultaneously. Within 6 hours, they had created remote-controlled laser turrets hidden throughout the colony ruins. Each device looked like broken construction equipment, but could deliver lethal energy bursts with surgical precision. So-Jin, the colony administrator, had survived in the deepest bunker complex. When human soldiers appeared in her shelter, she could hardly believe it. "Your message reached Earth," Jiho explained. "We came as fast as we could." 12 soldiers. So-Jin looked around at the small human team. Against an entire Korthak fleet. 12 soldiers and 200,000 Valians, Jiho corrected. "If you are willing to fight." So-Jin had spent her life managing peaceful projects and diplomatic negotiations. The idea of violence went against everything she believed. But looking at the faces of her terrified people, she made a decision that would have seemed impossible days earlier. "What do you need us to do?" The transformation began immediately. Valian transport drones were modified to carry explosives. Their communication networks became coordination systems for guerrilla attacks. Even their food preparation equipment found military applications. "This thermal processor can heat metal to melting point," explained Dr. Haewon, showing Da-un, a device normally used for cooking. "If we modify the containment field, we can create thermite grenades," Da-un finished. "Brilliant." The first coordinated strike came at dawn. Korthak patrols throughout the colony found themselves under attack from multiple directions. Laser turrets emerged from rubble to pick off soldiers. Modified drones dropped explosives with surgical precision. Transport tubes that had once carried supplies now delivered death. Commander Wu Jin received 15 casualty reports within an hour. His perfectly planned occupation was falling apart. "What is the source of this resistance?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his aide replied nervously. "The attacks are coming from everywhere and nowhere. Our sensors detect no organized military force." "Then find the source. Deploy hunter-killer teams. Tear apart every building if necessary." But the Korthak hunting parties found only empty ruins and booby traps. The enemy they faced left no permanent positions to attack. They struck quickly and vanished back into the underground network before reinforcements could arrive. Minsu became a ghost haunting the colony. He moved through tunnel systems and emerged at unexpected locations, taking impossible shots before disappearing again. His rifle, designed for human conflicts, proved devastatingly effective against alien armor. "Target eliminated," he reported after dropping a Korthak squad leader from nearly a kilometer away. Moving to secondary position. The psychological effect was as important as the tactical one. Korthak soldiers began looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows. They had never faced an enemy who refused to fight by conventional rules. Yujin worked with Valian medical personnel to establish treatment centers in hidden locations. But she also taught them combat medicine, how to treat pulse weapon burns, how to stop bleeding from projectile wounds, how to keep fighters operational under fire. "In our society, we preserve life at all costs," Dr. Haewon said, as he learned to treat a wounded human soldier. "In our society, we preserve life by ending." "Threats to it," Yujin replied. "Different methods, same goal." By the end of the second day, the humans and Valians had transformed their tactics completely. Instead of hiding and hoping for rescue, they were actively hunting Korthak forces. The peaceful colony had become a fortress where every shadow might hide an enemy. Taemin found himself leading strike teams into areas he had once designed for commerce and education. "The thermal plant provides power to the entire eastern district," he explained to a mixed group of humans and Valians. "If we take it back, we can control their communications." "How many guards?" asked Private Dong Ho, one of Jiho's soldiers. 20, maybe 30. But they have heavy weapons and defensive positions. "Then we do not attack the positions," Da-un said with a grin. "We attack the power supply." The assault on the thermal plant became a masterpiece of combined human and Valian tactics. While Korthak soldiers watched for direct attacks, the strike team used maintenance tunnels to reach the plant's foundation. Explosive charges placed at structural weak points brought down entire sections of the building. As Korthak forces regrouped in the rubble, modified Valian drones swept in to finish the job. The energy weapons that had once built the colony now helped defend it. Commander Wu Jin stared at the tactical display showing his dwindling forces. In 48 hours, he had lost over 200 soldiers to an enemy he could not even identify. "Sir," his aide ventured carefully, "perhaps we should request reinforcements from the fleet." Wu Jin's red eyes blazed with anger. "You want me to tell the Emperor that I need help conquering a planet of peaceful farmers? No, sir, but find me this enemy. Use every sensor, every scanner, every probe we have. I want to know what species has the audacity to challenge the Korthak Empire." In the tunnels below, Ji-Ho and So-Jin planned their next moves. The Valian administrator had learned to think like a guerrilla fighter, while the human captain gained deep respect for Valian ingenuity. "The Korthak will eventually call for orbital bombardment," Ji-Ho warned. "When they cannot control the ground, they destroy it." "Then we need to make that impossible," So-Jin replied. "I have an idea, but it will require everything we have." She outlined her plan. Ji-Ho smiled grimly. The peaceful administrator was thinking like a soldier now, and her idea was absolutely insane, which meant it might actually work. Commander Wu Jin stood on his command ship's bridge, staring down at the burning colony. 3 days of occupation had turned into a nightmare. His elite ground forces were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. "Sir," his fleet communications officer reported, "Admiral Krek is demanding an explanation for our delays." Wu Jin's claws dug into the metal railing. The Admiral commanded the entire Korthak Third Fleet and had no patience for commanders who could not complete simple planetary conquests. "Tell the Admiral that we have encountered unexpected resistance. Request permission to begin orbital bombardment of all surface structures." "Even the ones we wanted to capture intact? Better to rule over ashes than to lose more soldiers to these ghosts." The message went up the chain of command quickly. Within an hour, Admiral Krek's response came back. "Permission granted. Cleanse the planet." In the tunnels below, Taemin's sensors detected the energy buildup in the Korthak ships above. "They are charging their main weapons," he reported to the command center. "Orbital bombardment will begin within the hour." So-Jin looked around at the mixed group of humans and Valians gathered in the deep bunker. Families huddled together, children pressed close to their parents. Engineers sat next to human soldiers, all of them dirty and exhausted from 3 days of constant fighting. "Is your plan ready?" Ji-Ho asked quietly. So-Jin nodded, though her hands shook slightly. "The geothermal plant sits directly above a massive energy reservoir. If we can overload the containment systems, the resulting explosion will send an electromagnetic pulse into orbit. That will disable the Korthak ships," Da-Un added, "but it will also destroy most of the colony." "The colony is already destroyed," So-Jin replied. "This way some of us might survive." The plan was desperate and dangerous. The geothermal plant provided power to the entire planet by tapping into the molten core beneath the surface. By removing the safety controls and redirecting all energy through the primary conduits, they could create an artificial eruption. "How long do we have?" Ji-Ho asked Taemin. The young engineer checked his instruments again. "The Korthak weapons will be ready in 53 minutes. We need at least 40 minutes to reach the plant and set up the overload sequence." "That gives us 13 minutes to get clear," Yu-Jin calculated, "assuming everything goes perfectly." Ji-Ho looked at his team. 3 days of fighting had taken its toll. They were running low on ammunition and explosives. Several soldiers carried wounds that would have sent them to medical facilities under normal circumstances. "Any volunteers stay behind to guard the tunnels while the strike team moves out?" Every hand went up, human and Valian alike. Ji-Ho felt a pride that had nothing to do with military achievement. These people had found something worth fighting for. Dongho Minsu, stay here with Dr. Haiwan and coordinate tunnel defenses. Everyone else, we move in 5 minutes. The strike team consisted of 8 humans and 12 Valians, including Taimin and So-Jin. They carried the last of their explosive charges and weapons jury-rigged from colony equipment. Their target was the most heavily defended position in the colony. Above ground, Korthak soldiers had surrounded the geothermal plant with multiple defensive rings. Armored vehicles patrolled the perimeter, while sentry towers provided overlapping fields of fire. Commander Wu Jin had correctly identified the facility as strategically important. 42 contacts around the plant, Minsu reported through his scope from a distant position. Heavy weapons emplacements at all approaches. Can you provide sniper support? Jiho asked. For the first phase, yes. After that, I will be too. Far away. The assault began with Minsu's rifle speaking from the darkness. Korthak sentries dropped one by one, their companions searching frantically for a sniper they could not locate. In the confusion, the strike team moved closer to their target. Da-Un and Taemin led a demolition squad toward the plant's eastern wall. The Valian engineer knew exactly where to place charges for maximum effect. His peaceful training in structural design now served a very different purpose. The support columns here and here, he whispered, marking targets on the building plans. Remove these, and the entire section will collapse. What about civilians inside? Asked Private Su Young. There are no civilians, So-Jin replied grimly. The Korthak executed all the plant workers on the first day. The explosions began at exactly 2347 hours. Da-Yun's charges brought down the eastern wall in a cascade of metal and concrete. Smoke and dust filled the air as the strike team rushed through the breach. Inside the plant, Korthak soldiers scrambled to respond to the sudden attack. But they found themselves fighting an enemy that knew every corridor and maintenance shaft. Vaelian engineers led human soldiers through passages the aliens did not even know existed. Yu Jin and 2 Vaelian technicians fought their way to the control room while Jiho's squad cleared the main reactor chamber. Pulse rifle fire echoed through. The facility as 2 very different species learned to fight as one unit. Control room secured, Yu Jin reported. Beginning overload sequence. Taemin's fingers flew over control panels he had helped design years earlier, but instead of maintaining safe power levels, he was deliberately causing a catastrophic failure. Safety. Systems offline, he announced, redirecting all geothermal flow to primary conduits. Containment failure in 37 minutes. How do we survive the blast? Asked Dr. Myung Jin, one of the Valian technicians. The old mining tunnels in Sector 7 run deeper than the main colony levels, So-Jin explained. If we can reach them before the overload, we should be below the worst effects. Outside the plant, Commander Wu Jin received reports of the attack with growing alarm. How many enemy forces? Unknown, sir. They appeared to emerge from the ground itself. Send all available units to the geothermal plant. Do not let them damage our primary power source. But Wu Jin's reinforcements arrived too late. The strike team had already completed their mission and was fighting their way back to the tunnel entrance. Behind them, the plant's reactor systems climbed steadily toward critical overload. The running battle through the colony streets became a desperate race against time. Korthak soldiers pursued the retreating humans and Valians, pulse rifles lighting up the darkness. But the defenders knew every shortcut and hiding place. 23 minutes until overload, Taemin called out as they reached the tunnel entrance. Move! Move! Jiho shouted, ushering the slower Valians into the safety of the underground passages. Above them, the orbital bombardment began. The first energy beams lanced down from space, turning buildings into molten slag. The Korthak fleet had decided to solve their ground problem by destroying everything on the planet's surface. 15 minutes to overload, Taemin reported. We need to reach the deep tunnels. They ran through passages filled with other survivors, civilians who had waited in the darkness for days, families with children, elderly academics, young couples who had never imagined their peaceful world could become a battlefield. "This way," Sojin called, leading them toward the old mining complex. "The reinforced tunnels should protect us from the electromagnetic pulse." Behind them, the geothermal plant began to shake as containment systems failed. Steam vented from emergency releases while automated warnings echoed through empty corridors. The planet itself was being turned into a weapon. 8 minutes, Taimin announced. "Everyone needs to be in the deepest sections." They reached the mining tunnels just as the orbital bombardment intensified. The Korthak fleet was pouring devastating firepower onto the colony, unaware that their target was about to strike back. "All civilians in the reinforced chambers," Jiho ordered. "Emergency positions for countdown." In space, Commander Wu Jin watched his weapons systematically destroy the planet's surface. "Finally," he muttered. "No more surprises from whatever species has been causing us trouble." Admiral Kreck's image appeared on the command screen. "Status report, Commander." "Orbital. Bombardment proceeding as planned, sir. All surface resistance will be eliminated within the hour." "Excellent. The Emperor will be pleased that you finally resolved this situation." In the deep tunnels, the countdown reached its final seconds. Humans and Valians pressed together in the reinforced chambers, knowing they might not survive what came next. 5, 4, 3, 2. The planet's geothermal core erupted in a directed explosion that sent a massive electromagnetic pulse racing toward the sky. The energy beam, focused by crystalline conduits and amplified by Valian technology, struck the Korthak fleet like the fist of an angry god. Ship after ship went dark as the pulse overloaded their electrical systems. Weapons failed, shields collapsed, and engines died. The mighty Korthak fleet found itself helpless in space, their technological superiority useless against a planet that had learned to fight back. In the tunnels below, the defenders felt the shockwave pass over them. Emergency lighting flickered and went out, the air filled with dust and the sound of shifting rock. But they were alive, and above them, everything had changed. In the darkness of space above Nexus Prime, the mighty Korthak Third Fleet drifted like dead metal. 43 warships that had conquered dozens of worlds now floated helplessly, their power systems fried by the electromagnetic pulse from below. Admiral Kreck stood in his darkened command center, emergency lighting casting red shadows on his face. "Damage report," he demanded. "All ships report total power loss, sir," his aide replied, voice shaking. "Main engines offline, weapons systems dead, shield generators destroyed, emergency power only." How is that possible? What weapon could disable an entire fleet? "Unknown, sir. The energy pulse originated from the planet's surface. Our sensors registered it as a natural geological event, but natural events do not destroy Korthak technology," Admiral Kreck finished grimly. "Send a message to the nearest Imperial base. Request immediate assistance." "Sir, communications are also offline." For the first time in his career, Admiral Kreck felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The Korthak Empire ruled through technological superiority and overwhelming force. Now both had been stripped away by an enemy they did not even understand. Deep in the mining tunnels of Nexus Prime, the survivors emerged from their protective chambers. The electromagnetic pulse had shaken the entire planet, but the reinforced tunnels had held. Emergency lights flickered back to life as backup power systems activated. "Is everyone alive?" Jiho called out in the darkness. One by one, voices answered from different sections of the tunnel complex. Humans and Valians had survived together in the deepest places of the planet. Taman checked his instruments with growing excitement. "The pulse worked perfectly. I am detecting no active energy signatures from the Korthak fleet. Their ships are completely disabled." Sojin felt tears of relief running down her face. For the first time in days, her people might actually survive. "How long will they remain powerless?" "The electromagnetic damage is extensive," Taemin replied. It will take weeks to repair their systems, even if they have replacement parts. Jiho was already thinking tactically. Then we need to act fast. They still have ground forces scattered throughout the colony. Yujin organized medical teams to treat the wounded while Da-un began inventory of their remaining weapons and explosives. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, they had a real chance of victory. On the surface, Commander Wu Jin found himself cut off from his fleet and surrounded by an increasingly hostile environment. His ground forces were scattered across the ruined colony, many of them demoralized by the loss of orbital support. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have lost contact with the fleet. All orbital platforms are offline." Wu Jin stared at the smoke-filled sky. Without naval support, his ground forces were vulnerable, but he was a Korthak commander trained to never surrender. "Recall all patrol units to the main landing zone," he ordered. "We establish a defensive perimeter and wait for reinforcements." But reinforcements would not be coming for a very long time. The human strike teams emerged from the tunnels like ghosts seeking revenge. 3 days of defensive fighting had taught them every weakness in Korthak tactics. Now they moved with purpose, hunting the scattered enemy forces. Minsu had found a perfect sniper position in the ruins of a communications tower. From there, he could cover most of the eastern colony. His rifle had become legendary among both humans and Valians, the weapon that never missed. "Target acquired," he reported quietly. "Korthak patrol, 6 members, moving toward the civilian shelters." "Take them," Jiho authorized. The first shot dropped the patrol leader. The others scattered, seeking cover that no longer existed. Minsu's rifle spoke 5 more times, and the threat was eliminated. Daeyun led demolition teams armed with modified Valian equipment. Construction tools became siege weapons, transport drones became bombers, and the peaceful infrastructure of the colony became a weapons factory. "The Korthak have fortified the main landing zone," she reported to Jiho. 20 vehicles, approximately 200 soldiers." "Can we take it?" Da-un smiled grimly. "Give me 6 hours and every mining laser in the colony. The final assault on the Korthak position became a masterpiece of human-Valian cooperation. While human soldiers provided tactical leadership, Valian engineers created weapons that the enemy had never imagined. Mining lasers, normally used to cut through solid rock, became precision artillery. Transport systems designed to move heavy. Equipment became delivery platforms for massive explosive charges. Even the colony's water treatment plant was weaponized, flooding enemy positions with corrosive chemicals. Commander Wu Jin watched his defensive perimeter crumble under attacks that seemed to come from the very ground itself. His soldiers, trained to fight conventional enemies, had no answer for an opponent that turned peaceful technology into instruments of war. "Sir," his aide called desperately, "they have breached the eastern perimeter. Our forces are falling back. To the landing ships!" "Hold position," Wu Jin ordered. "We are Korthak warriors. We do not retreat." But even Korthak warriors could not fight an entire planet that had learned to defend itself. The battle ended when So-Jin herself walked into the Korthak command post, flanked by human soldiers and carrying a device that hummed with barely contained energy. "Commander Wu Jin," she said in careful Korthak language, "I am Administrator So-Jin of Nexus Prime Colony. You will surrender your forces immediately." The Korthak commander looked at the small, blue-skinned alien with contempt. "You are a conquered people. You have no authority to demand anything." So-Jin raised the device in her hands. It was a modified power cell from the geothermal plant, containing enough energy to level several city blocks. This weapon was created by peaceful people who learned to fight for their survival, she said calmly. "If you do not surrender, I will detonate it. Your soldiers will die, my soldiers will die, but Nexus Prime will remain free." Wu Jin stared into So Jin's eyes and saw something that chilled him. The absolute determination of someone who had lost everything and found the strength to take it back. "I surrender," he said quietly. News of the victory at Nexus Prime spread throughout the galaxy at light speed. The peaceful Valians had not only survived a Korthak invasion, but had captured an entire fleet. The story inspired other peaceful species and terrified aggressive empires. 6 months later, Nexus Prime had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a fortress world built by pacifists. Vaelian technology and human tactics combined to create defenses that other species studied and copied. Captain Ji-Ho, promoted to colonel, established the first human Vaelian military academy in the rebuilt colony. Students from dozens of peaceful species came to learn how to turn their own technology into defensive weapons. The key, Ji-Ho explained to a class of mixed aliens, is not to become warriors like the Korthak. It is to remain who you are while learning to protect what you value. So Jin became the elected president of the new Nexus Prime Defense Coalition. Her first act was to establish a rapid response network that could coordinate mutual defense between peaceful worlds. Taemin led the engineering teams that turned Vaelian colonies throughout the sector into defensive strongholds. Mining equipment became artillery, transport systems became missile platforms, and communication networks became early warning systems. Da Yun trained explosive specialists from a dozen species, teaching them to see weapons in every piece of peaceful technology. "A construction laser is just a rifle that has not learned to aim," she told her students. Min-Su became the instructor for long-range combat tactics, his impossible shots now legendary throughout the sector. "Distance is not about how far you can shoot," he explained. "It is about how far your enemies think you can shoot." Yujin established medical protocols for species that had never faced combat injuries. Her trauma techniques saved thousands of lives as peaceful worlds learned to survive in a dangerous galaxy. When the Korthak Empire returned with a massive fleet to reclaim Nexus Prime, they found something that shocked their commanders: a coalition of 30 peaceful species that had learned to fight as one united force. The Second Battle of Nexus Prime lasted 6 hours. The Korthak fleet, expecting to face helpless civilians, encountered coordinated resistance from species they had conquered easily before. Modified mining lasers carved through their ships while transport drones delivered precision strikes against their formations. Admiral Krek, commanding from his rebuilt flagship, watched his forces retreat for the first time in Korthak history. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These species were pacifists?" "They still are, sir," his aide replied, studying sensor readings. "But they have learned that sometimes pacifists must fight to remain peaceful." The victory at Nexus Prime marked the beginning of the end for the Korthak Empire. Species that had once cowered before their fleets now stood together in mutual defense. The galaxy learned that peace was not weakness. It was strength that chose not to harm until harm was threatened. In the rebuilt capital of Nexus Prime, a memorial stood to the 12 human soldiers who had arrived when all hope was lost. But the inscription was written in dozens of languages, because the real memorial was not a statue. It was a free galaxy where peaceful people had learned to protect what they loved. The Korthak Empire still existed, but it no longer expanded.